Terry Fontenot, Raheem Morris, and any other team that is in dire need of some pass rush help, it is your lucky year because this draft class is loaded up front on the defensive line, and the Senior Bowl returns are showing that. I read this from ESPN's Matt Miller talking about what's the best part about this draft class, and here's what he said. This is the best defensive line group I've seen in the 15 years I've attended the Senior Bowl. Ole Miss's Walter Nolan, Princely U, plus Texas A&M's Shamir Stewart are first-round talents and headline a group that has 11 players ranked among my top 65 prospects. Marshall's speedy edge rusher Mike Green is another player to watch. This group is stacked and versatile with quick, smaller edge players and big, strong defensive ends such as Texas' Alfred Collins and Kentucky's Deone Walker. The defensive line is the strength of the 2025 draft class, and it will be well represented in Mobile. This is a great year for a team to be going into the draft needing to add some edge rushers, some pass rush, some good defensive linemen altogether. Not a good year if you are in search of a quarterback. Luckily for the Falcons, that's not the case this offseason. But I'm wondering if a team like Atlanta or any other team looking for pass rushing help can top what has been an incredible run by the LA Rams in terms of sacks from their rookies. What I did was I looked over the last 5 years and I found which team got the most sacks from their rookie class. The last 2 years, the LA Rams, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk paving the way, Kobe Turner and Byron Young the season before that. In 2022, Aiden Hutchinson and Houston for the Lions carrying the workload. In 2021, you had 16 sacks from the Cowboys altogether. 2020, Chase Young definitely taking a majority of the workload for the Commies. But I think this rookie class could do better than 13.5 and be closer to the ridiculous 19 and 20.5 sacks those two teams got from their rookies in 2023 and 2022. It is a perfect time for the Falcons to look to add an edge rusher. It's just a little bit of a gift from above where, what do you need? We've got plenty of it, right? You don't want to be a team walking into the 2025 draft store and asking for a quarterback or a wide receiver. We don't have that for you. You know what we do have? Defensive linemen, running backs, and tight ends. Atlanta's pretty good at running back, I think, with Bijan. Hot take. Tight end can be up for debate, seeing what they do with Kyle Pitts, but defensive line from interior to edge rusher, all of it is on the table for Atlanta because there's not one spot on that defensive line where you and I can say for absolute certainty they've got the guy for the next 3 to 4 seasons. Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata are the two most reliable players on this front five for the Dirty Birds, and they are pushing 32, 33 years old, and no guarantee they will be back for 2025. So, that being said, now let's talk about who the Falcons could end up with in this draft class in round 1 and possibly round 2, because we'll just kind of revisit a little bit of some of the top prospects from Mel Kiper as just a launching point for you guys to get familiar with this draft class from the defensive end position to the outside linebacker position. Some people think Abdul Carter is a generational talent. When I think generational edge rusher that goes top 1, top 2 overall, I'm thinking Myles Garrett, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa. We had Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson. Carter's a little bit different than all those guys because he only played the position for 1 year. It was his first year as an edge rusher, and he put up 12 sacks. So sky is the limit. But let's be real, the Falcons are not going to land Abdul Carter. But that's okay. Like, this is an okay draft class where if you are in need of a pass rusher, you're not picking top 10, you're A-okay. Like Mike Green, 17 sacks, led the country. James Pearce, incredible physical tools and speed. Michael Williams, someone who's just scratching the surface after missing some time in 2024 due to an injury, but coming to play when the lights were the brightest in the SEC championship game against Texas. So, looking over Mel Kiper's rankings here, I do want to take a look at a couple of different combinations for the Falcons in the draft. Really quickly, I just want to give a big special shout out, though, to everyone that liked our video yesterday. Trizzy Trace, the Saints host here at Chat Sports, said, you guys can't get 500 likes when he was shit-talking me in the office, and you completely skull-fucked his channel. 1,300 likes. Now I want to get to 1,500 likes. I don't want to take my foot off the gas. Put some pressure down on Saints Now throat. Hit that thumbs up button down below if you haven't already. So what I want to do next here on the show is go through a couple of different mock draft scenarios. It's January. Let's have some fun, shall we? So there's one possible mock draft strategy or draft strategy altogether. If you're looking for just, hey, I want guys that can get after the quarterback. I want the best pass rushers available for the Falcons in round 1 and round 2. I'm thinking James Pearce Jr. at 15 and Jack Sawyer in round number 2. Pearce comes off a 7.5 sack campaign for the Vols. Meanwhile, Sawyer, 9 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, helped the Ohio State Buckeyes get to the national championship game and ultimately win it all, especially with that big score he had against Texas to put the game on ice, more or less. Pearce and Sawyer are very different style prospects, though. I think Jack Sawyer is more of a defensive end. If you're in a 3-4 defense, which the Falcons ran last year, he's going to have a hand on the ground. He's going to be that 5 technique position that Atlanta really didn't have this past season. Year before that, they kind of had it with Calais Campbell, not so much this past year. Meanwhile, James Pearce Jr. will fit a 3-4 defense quite nicely as an outside linebacker. That role that Judon and Arnold McCady were in. He's an incredible athlete. His speed is definitely his biggest strength. That's kind of an oxymoron. His speed is his best asset, though. That's what I'm trying to say here. He is going to beat people with his legs and his burst off the line of scrimmage. He does need to improve at taking down the quarterback. Jeff Ulbrich talked all about generating pressure. That's him. James Pearce will generate pressure. He will make quarterbacks uncomfortable. But he doesn't always take him down for a sack, which some people are a little frustrated with. But I'll remind you, pressure is what led to Josh Allen throwing the ball away very quickly against the Chiefs. And even though he wasn't sacked, it led to an incomplete pass and turnover on downs, and Chiefs go on to the Super Bowl. So don't discount pressures. Meanwhile, Sawyer, he doesn't have that speed that James Pearce has. He's also about 20 pounds bigger. But what he does have is incredible effort, strength, and power. The guy's motor is never off. First, second, third down, he is going 110%, which you might think is just natural. Who doesn't go 110%? A lot of pass rushers on first down and 10 when the other team's going to run the football are not going to use all of their energy. They want to save it for 3rd and 8 when they know the team is going to pass and they can pin their ears back. So Pearce in round 1, Sawyer in round 2. You're getting someone who can play up front on the line in a 3-4 defense as a defensive end and an outside linebacker. These two could complement each other quite nicely. Before we look at the other mock draft combinations I cooked up, who do you got for the Super Bowl? Eagles or Chiefs? I'm having a tough time closing my eyes and envisioning Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts defeating Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And that's where I'm getting stuck. I want the Eagles to win. I don't want to see the three-peat. I'm not here to root on history. Screw that. So I'm going to pull for the Eagles, but my gut tells me the Chiefs. We're going to look at the next mock draft in just a moment here, but first, a quick shout-out to our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players. Prize Picks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. They also do a ton of fun things like this. For the big game coming up, you can get Patrick Mahomes' passing yards at 0.5. They're just giving it to you. So take that, add one more, and if you go 2 for 2, you can make a good chunk of change right there. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All of that information is in the comments and description of today's video. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. So another scenario I could see the Falcons going down is, let's kind of appease both sides here. How about edge rusher in round 1, and then interior defensive line in round 2. In this scenario, I'm thinking maybe Michael Williams, just to give you guys a few more names to look at, the edge rusher out of Georgia, and then Derek Harmon, who could go in round 1, but I could see him potentially slipping to round 2, the defensive tackle from Oregon. Some background on both these players. Williams is a bit bigger than James Pearce, which is why I have him as an edge. I think I called him in my last video like just a pure outside linebacker. We'll see what he weighs in at the combine, but I could see him being a defensive end if needed. Now, high upside with the athleticism. I mean, a lot of these Georgia guys, they are just athletic freaks. We have seen that before. I don't think he's as athletic as like Trayvon Walker was, but the flashes are there. The issue is we just didn't see enough consistency from Williams because I think partially due to an ankle injury he suffered earlier in the 2024 season. But when he does get going, 30+% of his career tackles resulted in a loss. So it just goes to show if you can kind of capture what he's capable of and stretch it over a 17-game season, I'm not going to say you're getting like the next defensive player of the year, but you're going to get a perennial Pro Bowl edge rusher. Meanwhile, Derek Harmon, 6'5", 310 pounds. He can play in a 3-4 defense or a 4-3 defense. So that's a big turn on, I would say, for Jeff Ulbrich if he's thinking about changing things up schematically. You've got a jack of all trades. Now, the downside with Harmon is just that last year, this was kind of the position group that the Falcons targeted a lot. Rukaroro was 295-ish pounds, so another big interior defensive lineman. Brandon Dorlus, we barely saw at all his rookie season. Braylon Trice is an outside linebacker, so you added 2. Zion Logue, if you want to count him as well. 3 defensive tackles in last year's draft. Not quite sure if they're going to want to add more defensive tackles with premium picks, but if they feel like Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata are very much on the way out, and this is a position group that can be the engine for their defense because there is no place that quarterbacks hate getting pressure more than right up the middle, well, Harmon's the guy for that. I mean, he had 5 sacks last season for the Duckies, 11 tackles for loss. He is nasty. I've got this tough issue of when thinking and talking about Pac-12, just bear with me, let's call them Pac-12, West Coast defenders. I always think they're just a little bit too like candy ass, meaning they don't strike me as mean, tough, SOB, physical guys. Harmon is that guy, though. So this is maybe just more of a message to myself or anyone else that feels like I really struggle picturing an Oregon defender being the meanest guy on the field. Harmon is. He reminds me of players that could play in like tough cold weather situations. Started his career off at Michigan State, then he transferred to Eugene. So if you're looking for one of those guys that's just a fourth liner, an enforcer, he's kind of your guy. Meanwhile, on to my last potential draft scenario. This is what I call the fatties only draft. If you are looking for players to stick right in the middle of the defensive line because you feel like this defensive tackle class is too good to pass on and you want to address the edge rusher in free agency or later in the draft, I don't know. But if you want to go that route, let me tell you what's on the menu. Walter Nolan, the Ole Miss defensive tackle who was a big-time recruit coming out, transferred from A&M to Oxford, followed by Deone Walker, defensive tackle out of Kentucky. Walker has been the talk of the town so far in Mobile, Alabama. 6'7", 340 pounds. There's just not many draft classes to begin with that feature 6'7", 340 pounds. Then you might think, okay, he's super big, but he's probably slow and fat. Oh no, he's big and he's got some speed. I'm not going to say that he's like the fastest guy in the world, but he moves way quicker than you would expect someone for his size to move. Same goes for Nolan too, which we'll get to in a moment. But Walker, he's got some crazy potential. Unfortunately, the reason why he's not talked about more as a slam dunk round 1 target is major regression. 2023, 7.5 sacks with the Wildcats. 2024, 1.5 sacks. So where do those 6 sacks go? That's what people have to answer when doing their pre-draft analysis on Walker. Meanwhile, Nolan, He came in a little bit lighter than I expected. Ole Miss's team website, which is what I always use for measurements before the combine, had him at 305 pounds. Senior Bowl weighed him in at 293 pounds, so just a little 12-pound difference. But to a scout, 12 pounds is a lot of meat on the bones there. But he's got great production. He may not be the most physically gifted player in this draft, but like James Pearce, like Michael Williams. But I'm seeing a guy who's pushing 300, getting 6.5 sacks and 14 tackles for loss. Yeah, I understand that some people really want that 3 next to their defensive tackles. I'll take 293 if it means all that pass rush upside and the run-stopping capabilities as well. I could easily see Nolan being a round 1 person and then Walker slipping to round 2 because one too many teams that need a defensive tackle find another player with less red flags than Walker when it comes to his pad level. He is someone that quickly gets up to 6'7", and while that might be intimidating when you're going up against a 6'5" offensive lineman and you're standing straight up like a tower, it's not that difficult for them to get their way. So the pad level has to come down for Walker, and people have to figure out what happened to the production from 2023 to 2024. But this right here is your fatties only. So who is your number 1 draft target for the Dirty Birds? The draft is all said and done. Right this moment, who do you want to be announced as the 15th overall pick for the Falcons? We have a long ways to go, so I invite you to get in the comment section now, but don't be afraid to change your mind as well. I definitely will change my mind over players over the course of the next couple of weeks and months, but I also remind you that we should make our determination on these prospects based on the games they play. I love the NFL draft, but something that just plagues and handicaps people when talking about the draft is they forget about the whole season that they just played, and they become obsessed with the pre-draft process. The Senior Bowl, the Combine, running around in their underwear in Lucas Oil Field, interviews, and they never care to think about, what did you think of the player when you were watching him in November? So file that away when you're thinking about who your number 1 target is. When you were watching these games back when they were being played, did you come away with an impression, good or bad, for any of these guys? We were going to end the video with a name wheel spin, but the wheel spin website is just not cooperating today. So just want to give a quick shout out to Liam H4561, Eli Johnson, Kiri Sims, Aiden Stackhouse, Charles Cooley, and Pedro. You guys were selected for the wheel spin. So unfortunately, it didn't work today, but hopefully in the future it will. All right, I'll see you everyone later.